a member of the WHO, has come out and talked about they don't like the lockdowns. They want to reverse those. And even Trump tweeted about that in a recent tweet.
Lockdowns are killing countries all over the world. The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. Open up your states, Democrat governors, open up New York, a long battle, but they finally did the right thing. This is getting a lot of press, actually, and it's right on the heels of the Great Barrington petition. So amazing week, actually. And we were reporting on a lot of this last week to see the WHO come forward. I think we actually have a video on this guy from the WHO. Let's take a look at this.
We in the World Health Organization do not advocate lockdowns as a primary means of control of this virus. The only time we believe a lockdown is justified is to buy you time to reorganize, regroup, rebalance your resources, protect your health workers who are exhausted. But by and large, we'd rather not do it. It seems that we may well have a doubling of world poverty by next year. We may well have at least a doubling of child malnutrition because children are not getting meals at school and their parents in poor families are not able to afford it. This is a terrible, ghastly global catastrophe, actually. And so we really do appeal to all world leaders. Stop using lockdown as your primary control method. Develop better systems for doing it. Work together and learn from each other. But remember, lockdowns just have one consequence that you must never, ever belittle, and that is making poor people an awful lot poorer.
I mean, he's not exactly being subtle about it, right? I mean, that was a pretty definitive statement from the WHO. What kind of response? I mean, it's I'm mind blown right now when you listen to that.
Well, I think people really go back and listen to that again, everybody, because this is not a guy they pulled off the street. This isn't some first-year intern. This guy is the WHO's special envoy to COVID-19. And before that, Dr. Nabarro, he served on a coordinator for the UN Task Force on Global Food Security for 6 years. So when he's talking about malnutrition, food issues, this guy knows what he's talking about. In 2016, he was in line to become the Director General of the WHO. Not someone who, is going to mince some words. He's decided over.
Instead of hiring some mob boss from Ethiopia, we could have actually had him leading the WHO. Is that what I'm to understand? God forbid we get a doctor there that knows what he's talking about. Let's definitely have, king of gang warfare from Ethiopia come and run the WHO. Amazing. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's fantastic that he's out there making these statements. And I want to point out to people when I said the Great Barrington Declaration, if you have not signed up for it, this is a declaration written by 3 top scientists, but now signed on to over 35,000 scientists and doctors have signed on. If you're out there, please go to the Great Barrington Declaration, find it online, gbdeclaration.org. Even citizens, you can sign on to the declaration, which basically says, let's use focused protection, which is what we have been saying on the Highwire. Literally could be called the Highwire Declaration. But what we've been saying from the beginning, it's the same ideas that came out of Sweden. Let's have a focused protection of the elderly over the age of 65 that have comorbidities, while the rest of us that have almost no risk whatsoever, let's go out and catch this cold so that we can get our economies working and get herd immunity happening again. And this is really starting to influence the White House. I heard that the declaration is being considered by White House staff, and they seem to be looking at this too, right?
Yeah, there's a really big undercurrent that's now come to the surface. As with the Great Barrington Declaration, you have this really the intelligentsia of the WHO here speaking directly to the public. And then we have Scott Atlas. Recently, he was on Laura Ingraham, and he had some interesting things to say along these lines. Let's take a look.
Why don't we hear Dr. Fauci ever addressing the larger American patient? Do you ever ask him that? Do you ever talk to him and say, you never talk about these other circumstances that have been created by these lockdowns? And I'm telling you, this guy, Peter Hotez on CNN today, he said, he's a vaccine developer. He said, get ready. I'm telling my own family, get ready for lockdowns this winter. That's what they're saying.
I can say this. History will record the faces of the public health expertise as some of the most sinful, egregious, epic failures in the history of public policy. They have killed people with their lack of understanding and their lack of caring about not just the impact of cases of COVID-19, a virus that the overwhelming majority of people do well in, notwithstanding, of course, we're not underestimating 200,000 Americans who died. That's tragic. But these people have been a gross failure because they never cared to consider the impact of the policy itself. And the policy itself has been a complete epic failure. And honestly, some people say a crime against humanity. These people should be held accountable to what they said.
How does he really feel?
Strong words.
Very strong words, and frankly, a long time overdue. I mean, now, and this is the debate that, we have wanted for a very long time. Why was Fauci and Deborah Birx getting away with just the one-sided perspective of this lockdown and this illness when, as we've been reporting, people like Scott Atlas, hundreds, now tens of thousands of doctors around the world saying we have a totally different perspective of this. This is absolutely the wrong way to go. In the United States of America, in a free country, this should have been a debate that was happening in front of the public a long time ago. And now at least it's happening. I suppose maybe we're in a bubble. We're seeing it on Fox and the Highwire. I'm not sure how much CNN and MSNBC is seeing this debate take place. But it is starting to permeate, right? I really am starting to hear a lot more about herd immunity and about the Great Barrington Declaration, seeing articles written against it by mainstream media, which says to me it's penetrated. They're now afraid that people are going to wake up to the truth.
Yeah, and when people do wake up to the truth, as we've been reporting for such a long time with this COVID-19 response, there's real lives at stake. And I know everyone says this, but when you start looking beyond the myopic Fauci and, myopic, let's bring the case mortalities and cases down view to do the lockdowns, you're looking at less hospitalization, less people going in the hospital, cardiac arrests, cancer deaths, all of this stuff's happening in increased
treatments, not
diabetes.
Happening. Yeah.
And then the big thing, like Dr. Nabarro talked about, you're talking about world food insecurity. So what we're looking at is kind of an inconvenience here in the first world. You're looking at third world countries or socioeconomically devastated countries. They're talking just severe malnutrition. And, maybe we see some store shelves not stocked for a week or so. So people are really starting to understand that this has a consequence. And we need, like you said, as a greater global community to talk about this and make a decision as opposed to being dictated to by people that, don't have all the data or not working from the science.
Yeah. It's devastating. We keep wanting to really get into the details on that. We may do a show about that in the near future, but there's just so much happening, right? You're just seeing the total unraveling of the narrative taking place. In many ways, it's sad. We're finding ourselves in that position, right, Jeffrey, where how good does the I told you so feel when we're watching the deaths of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people because of the mistakes that have been made and the amount of people that bought into this terrible narrative that this was a deadly disease and we needed to lock down and destroy our lives. Now, at least finally, on the cusp of a very important election, the conversation is ramped up to another level. If you like that clip, then be sure to check out our live broadcast of The High Wire every Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Pacific Time. You can watch it on Facebook, iTunes, and Twitter. We'll see you there.